The only good thing about it taking so long is the shelf life is super long. So it's like, if in doubt, just keep making more product. I am in the process of building a more technical system than that, based on just instinct. But a friend of mine who I used to play rugby with in Taiwan, he set up a brewery it's called Red Point Brewery in Taipei. And his whole brewery is run on AI, basically. He knows the temperature in every tank, and he knows what bottles come in and what bottles go out, the whole process.
Welcome to Chain Reaction, the podcast for the supply chain and logistics industry. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Welcome everybody. Welcome again to the another episode of Chain Reaction podcast. As always, we talk about everything logistics and operations. And today I have a guest who is a co-founder of a Slowest. That's an interesting business, a brewery that makes sauces in Scotland. And I would love to talk about the processes, and I would like to talk about the logistics and supply chain and operations about it. Jonathan Hope, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Jonathan, one of the first things that I wanted to ask you, I've checked out your LinkedIn profile. I appreciate they may be a bit out of date. I saw you you had a bachelor degree in arts, and now you're running operations of a sauce brewing business. So how was that? How did you get here? So was that a conscious decision? Was that an accident? Please share with us the story.
I think that was an accident. Yeah. I studied Chinese and business at Leeds, and I did a year abroad in Taiwan. And then after Leeds, I did a year in Shanghai, but I never found, I'm not sure what I was looking for, but whatever it was, I didn't find it. So I came back, and I sort of by accident, I became a chef. I just started working in a local restaurant. I thought it was going to be for a few months to fill a gap. And then I just became really passionate about, I guess it's, if you work with passionate people, it can be contagious. And so then 10 years later, I had to start saying, well, I'm going to have to start calling myself a chef now, because I've been a chef for 10 years. I've done it longer than anything else in my life. But it was sort of after the pandemic, I wanted to, restaurants went through a really difficult period, and I wanted to work for myself and have autonomy. And so that's when we started the process of setting up the Miso brewery, what is now Slow Sauce. And I think at the very beginning of the process, we thought, what is the thing that's most important is to be actually making the product and to have full control over how it's done. Because I guess you have two options. You can find someone to outsource or to make it for you and just focus on the marketing, or you can do the production yourself, which is arguably much harder. It's a much bigger headache. But especially for something like this, which we don't have people making miso or brewing Shoyu. It's like Shoyu is just a Japanese word for soy sauce. We don't have a history of making this, so we had to do it from scratch ourselves, and we had to be in control of the whole process.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, you've taken quite a difficult path. Can I ask you what's inspired this? Because, well, Scotland is not necessarily known for as a big place for making soy sauces. Scotch, absolutely, but not necessarily the sauce. So how did you get there?
It's, well, I guess there's many different influences, and different things have inspired me. But the last person I was working for in London, I was working for a guy called Yotam Ottolenghi and his business partner, Sami Tamimi.
I've read the book.
Yeah. So, they are famous in London. They have a few restaurants and cafes, but it's an Israeli guy and a Palestinian guy. They had a restaurant they still have a restaurant called Rovi, and I was doing all of their fermentation. So which is like making vinegars and sauerkraut, kimchi, and the head chef Neil Campbell was, as long as we were doing it in our own time, he was happy for us to experiment and try new things. So I, in a proving cupboard, which they used to use for proving croissants, I turned it into, it was broken. They were going to chuck it out. And I said, no, let's keep it and start making Koji, which is the base ingredient for miso and soy sauce. So I turned it into an incubation chamber and we started experimenting, which is essentially growing. It's a kind of mushroom that you have to buy from Japan. And you grow it onto rice, or you can grow it onto any grain or any protein. And so my experiments first started there, which is kind of strange, I guess, yes, because it's in like what is essentially or ostensibly a Middle Eastern restaurant. Although they sort of they take their inspiration and the flavors in the restaurants are from all over the world. So that was one of the inspirations. The other is just how the Japanese, like as a Scottish person, it's not uncommon for people to buy expensive Japanese whiskey, and it's like a yeah, people will brag about buying whichever blend of Japanese whiskey is famous at that particular time, which is quite strange considering like we are supposed to be the kings of whiskey, but it's undisputed that the Japanese do things at such a level of artistry and you know they're taking it seriously. So when you spend money on Japanese whiskey, you're not wasting you're going to enjoy the product. And so it's also inspired by that, by their dedication to the art and the craft, and thinking, well, if they've done that with a Scottish product, like why can't we do the same with something that has Japanese roots and use some of the, as you can see behind me, like I'm using whiskey casks. So doing something Japanese, something very traditionally Asian, but doing it in a way that is also gives a nod to the Scottish, to where we are, to the Scottish roots and our craft as well.
That's very interesting. I mean, it feels like you are kind of you merging your passion with the local culture as well, and you making the references to whiskey whilst you doing kind of Japanese foods. One of the interesting things that that go through my head is, well, that definitely takes a lot of passion, but how do you merge passion with a business sense that needs profit, scale, sales, growth, all of that, which is very often requires you to kind of accelerate things. Whilst my understanding is from the brewing process is creating a sauce takes time. It needs to mature. It needs to grow. You mentioned mushrooms that are growing. So that's how do you manage? How you combine the two?
Yeah, it's difficult. Well, I think it's a sort of common trope, isn't it? In to do what you love and to do what you're passionate about. Like everybody should do it. You hear it advertised everywhere. You should just. I think it's like been one of the most painful years of my life. Like, it's super stressful, like running a business or setting anything up. So there is always the chance that if you do what you love, it will quickly turn into the opposite. But I guess maybe I'll talk first about the process, and then I can talk about which parts we choose to make efficient and which parts we choose to stick directly to the traditional and the old style of brewing.
Yes, please, because that's very interesting. Because my understanding in kind of, and I know virtually nothing about the process, but it takes months up to a year by the sound of it. So can you just maybe give us a kind of a gist of exactly what and how the process works?
Yeah. So you first, similarly, if you were brewing beer, most breweries, they won't culture their own yeast. You buy your yeast from a lab because you want one specific strain and you want it to be very accurate. So there's 4 or 5 different manufacturers in Japan of this particular strain of mushroom, which is called Aspergillus oryzae. And so we buy that. It's the only thing we buy in. It comes in in a pouch. It's like a white powder. You then have to almost, you cut it with, we're using organic oat flour, because similarly, if you're sowing grass seeds on a lawn, you want to cut it with sand so that you get an even distribution of seed. So you're cutting your mushroom spores with oat flour, and you choose whichever substrate. So we are choosing to grow the koji onto oats because we're in Scotland. The Japanese traditionally grow it onto rice or barley or soybeans, depending on which part of Japan and which agriculture they grow in that region. So we soak our oats, we steam them, and then when they're cool enough, the way you know they're cool enough is by if you put your hand on it. Like, you are a living organism and the mushroom is a living organism. So if you can't tolerate the heat, it's likely going to kill the mushroom. So you wait until it's sort of tolerable to touch, which is like 40 degrees C. You inoculate it. So for 25 kilos of, which is like a sack of oats, you'll need about 5 tablespoons. So it's like 20 grams of the diluted mushroom spores, which would be like 5 grams of the actual concentrated spores. You then leave it in, we have a big incubation chamber. So it's about 3 meters by 3 meters, and the temperature is about 28 degrees and 80% humidity. So you're basically mirroring the environment as it would be in Japan. The mushrooms will sort of lay down roots. Mushrooms are sort of like the opposite to humans. We put food in our bodies and we have enzymes in our stomachs that breaks down the food, whereas mushrooms will put their cells in their food and they will deploy roots, and along the roots they'll lay down these enzymes. First, protease, which breaks down protein. You think of a grain, it's almost like a city. It has a wall of protein around the outside, which is protecting the precious carbohydrate in the middle. So the mushroom first deploys protease to break down the
walls,
the hard shell, and it then deploys amylase, which is it breaks down the starch. There's also lipase, but we can leave the detail for another discussion. So after 2 days, your substrate, so your oats, have matted together, and it's like the roots have joined it into one block of koji, and you have to break it up every 6 hours during the process. Otherwise the mushroom overheats and it'll actually get so hot that it will kill itself before the end of the process. So once it's
very interesting. Very interesting. Can I just ask for maybe our viewers have seen Clarkson's farm when he was growing mushrooms. So it's not the mushroom that sticks out that you eat. Is actually what goes into production is the roots of the mushrooms that go inside the oats and they break down the carbohydrates and the proteins inside. So basically it's in internal fermentation.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't, this particular strain of mushroom, it doesn't have the fruiting bodies that the ones that Clarkson was trying to grow. It's just a mycelial mat that it creates, and along the mycelial strands, the roots, it deploys those enzymes. So you're just using it to get enzymes. It's a way to harness a large number of enzymes.
Okay, and then you have casks behind you. So when does that go?
So then if you're making the shoyu, you just fill the cask with water and salt. So it's about 20% salt brine. And then you put all of your koji, which is your oats that have the mushroom grown on it, into the cask. And you then have to stir it every day for at least a month. You're stirring it so that it doesn't get other unwanted yeasts or bacteria growing on the surface. If you just left it, every day it produces carbon dioxide and the solids float or push to the top. If you were to leave it, it would dry out on the top and you would get other things growing, which you don't want. So you have to reintroduce the solids and keep it liquid until it gets to a pH that is low enough that it sort of makes itself safe. So that's stirring every day for a month, and then after that you stir it gradually less and less. So yeah, it is a labor of love.
No, that's very, very interesting. So it's a fairly long process. So how do you? Because it is, I mean, to some extent, it is similar to kind of the maturity of the maturing whiskey. So um, let's park whiskey for a second. But in terms of what does it take 12 months? Because you said that like when you need to grow, you need to then stir something, and then it just stays there and then matures when it reaches the pH level for like another 11 months or 10 months.
So there is, depending on the recipe. So in the supermarket in the UK, you can get dark soy sauce, and if you're lucky, you can get a slightly lighter soy sauce. But our understanding of soy sauce is so limited. It's almost like somebody thought that cheese was just cheddar cheese. You get mild cheddar cheese and you get mature cheddar cheese, and when in fact there is a huge diversity of course, like every town has its own cheese in France, and it's
Yes.
similarly with soy sauce. So we are making a 3 month shoyu, which is
Hmm.
the recipe is predominantly grain, which is the oats, and we are making a 12 month shoyu, which is going to be a dark shoyu, which is um 50/50 peas and oats. So yeah, if you
So
want the dark one from the supermarket, you have to wait 12 months if you're doing it in the traditional method.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. So, how many different products you have, or different kind of different types of sauce? You said the dark. You said light. You have oats, and you have a bit more traditional soy sauce. So,
So we have the miso, the white miso, which is 3 months. We have the dark miso, which is made with peas, which is 12 months. And then similarly with the shoyu, we've got the light shoyu and the dark shoyu. So there's just four products. But even just that many products it's more barrels than we can fit. Because when you're waiting 12 months, they fill up quickly.
You are listening to Chain Reaction. This podcast is brought to you by Phlox, the leading marketplace for the supply chain and logistics industry. Visit phlox.is to find out how you find the perfect supplier or make your services available to prospective buyers. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to the show.
now, I appreciate that completely. So, and that's my next question. Because the production cycles are so different for different products, you have to manage this thing in a kind of a very, very carefully, kind of at different paces. And as we talked about kind of earlier, then kind of the world is speeding up, and here you're trying to kind of slow things down. So how do you manage this process? How do you manage to slow things down, and how you can keep walking at the pace that it is needed?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult balance, which I don't have the answer yet. Hopefully, we'll get there. At the moment, it just feels like if a barrel is empty, it gets filled up, and the system is yet to be more complicated than that. We have a local distillery which helps us like with barrels, and so recently they gifted us some oak, which were ex maple syrup casks, which they'd put rum into. So it's basically this. I'm like going around local distilleries asking for new barrels, and as soon as I have new barrels, I'm making more product. The only good thing about it taking so long is the shelf life is super long. So it's like, if in doubt, just keep making more product. I am in the process of building a more technical system than that, based on just instinct. But a friend of mine who I used to play rugby with in Taiwan, he set up a brewery which is called Red Point Brewery in Taipei. And his whole brewery is run on AI, basically. He knows the temperature in every tank, and he knows what bottles come in and what bottles go out, the whole process. So we are building together a system like this. So the business is not entirely slow. We take the production very seriously and do it in the traditional method. But in terms of how you do your admin, we're certainly not using pencil and paper. We're trying to build a system that can keep track of everything.
And yeah, that's what I wanted to mention and wanted to touch upon, because we did speak before the recording, is where it sounds like that very, very traditional process will kind of this, and the pace of it almost does not require any use of tech, and you can run it on a pen and paper. However, you're embracing actually the latest and greatest bits of technology that does monitoring, and you mentioned the word AI. So can you elaborate a little bit on that? So how do you exactly kind of, what are some of the interesting things that you do with the tech, and how it works, what it does, and most importantly, what it helps you with?
It's certainly not, it's not sexy at all. It's more just like helping us do all of the admin that needs to be done. Because you also got, when you're running a food business, you've got the environmental health to take into consideration. So they need you to have all of your temperature checks and your critical control points to make sure your food is safe. And when you've got barrels and barrels of sauce fermenting, it stacks up, and there's a huge amount of paperwork to do to keep everything in check. So the AI system is just being designed to help us do, because a lot of it can be automated. It's like we can temperature control we can monitor the temperature of the shoyu to make sure it's consistent, and we can monitor the level of salt, which is our critical control point. And so, yeah, there's nothing really groundbreaking. It's really just helping us to do the huge amount of admin that is inevitable in a food business.
Mm. I think, yeah, I've spoken with a few colleagues about AI on some of the podcasts, and I think we all agree, including us and the platform that we're building, is the AI is there to help. It's not there to replace. Expertise is not here to replace people. It's just to make us more productive, more accurate, more consistent. By taking care of some of the routines, exactly as you said, the admin stuff, I don't know, temperature controls, monitoring, and checking outliers, and potentially kind of the notifying in time what are the discrepancies are, maybe something that requires kind of attention. But the interesting thing that I wanted to explore as well is, as you guys grow, you need to scale up the business. What would be the process, and what are the considerations and challenges that you would face when scaling up the business? Would that be more of the same, or would that be, I don't know, a step change in some form required?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I guess we've chosen like quite a small format, which is it's like a 150-liter barrel. Of course, you can buy slightly bigger barrels, but any brewer will tell you, oh, you need to go to 1,000-liter tanks, or you need to start brewing stainless steel. Or I don't think we will ever do that, because it comes back to the question of authenticity. And it's like, to go on a slight tangent, but to go back to the AI, I think it's like we underestimate our ability as humans to be able to see authenticity, and we overestimate how intelligent AI is in terms of like writing emails or doing things that are touching the customer. Because I get emails through every day, and it's I just delete them because it's so obvious that they've been written by AI. Like, everything is perfect and there's nothing actually wrong with it. Like, the grammar is all great, but it's missing something human, which I can't even describe what that is, but
I understand what you mean. I think, yeah, what resonates with me is the kind of, in the world of fast food and a fast-paced manufacturing processes, you actually you want to stop and for a second and appreciate the art of somebody putting their heart and soul into creating a meal, or creating a dish, or creating a table, a chair. It's so easy to buy something like, or that comes from a conveyor belt.
yeah, exactly. It's everywhere. We can buy fast food in in every single petrol station. So yeah, it's super important to maybe hold on to those fundamentals, which are, okay, they are slowing you down. They are a chain around your neck, but I think that is the essence and that is the soul of the business. So you have to look at elsewhere to optimize.
So if I ask you this, so it's like, it almost sounds like, again, if we take kind of the Eastern and a Japanese way of thinking, of like lots of things are art of something. So if you are to describe the art of slowing down, what would it be? But most importantly, what will it bring? What it helps you with? Sometimes just taking things slightly slower, other than just running around. And
Yeah, I
the
think
slow sauce, you call it slow sauce. I mean, it's for a reason.
yeah, and this is why I'm always like, it's funny when you start a business called Slow Sauce, and then you see yourself doing things that are the opposite. Like if I'm racing to collect my daughter from nursery, I'm like, why am I driving like my car is on fire? And so you have to like bring myself back to earth. Because yeah, we are humans at the end of the day, and not everything I do is necessarily rational. But if I was to distill down the art of slowing down, it's and I've had to actually do it. So we had another daughter. I've got a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah, she arrived in the summer, and the business was basically born in the winter. Sorry, last winter. So I got to a stage by the summer where I was burnt out basically, and I took a little bit of paternity leave, which was a really good way to just reset and be like, okay, how am I going to not be? How am I going to stop this business from killing me? So how will I actually do the things that I'm talking about and the things that I'm saying out loud, like slowing down? How am I going to make this into practice? And for me, it's a matter of, have I done the things today that honor the goals I have in 10 years time and 20 years time? So I've got a board that I write now, which is like, have I had a good day? And on the board, it's like, have I done some exercise? Have I practiced some Japanese? Have I written a letter to somebody? It's all of the things that are not actually related to the health of the business, because there is always going to be fires to put out, and every single day you're going to be running around like a headless chicken about something. And so the most important things that I do in the morning are all things to do with my health and like my hobbies, basically. It's like, have I done my hobbies today? Have I done some breathing? Have I done some sitting? And I'm not saying I manage to do it every day, but the art of slowing down for me would be, have you watered the seeds of the other aspects of yourself? Because the reason I was so stressed at the beginning of the year was because I only had the business in my focus. And so I had no perspective. And so if anything went wrong or right, it was like you were on this emotional roller coaster. And so you're either depressed or you're anxious or you're over the moon, and so this last, it's just really been this last month, I've been intentionally walking to work, which is about a 25-30 minute walk. And I've been reading a book as I'm walking. You may say, okay, a way to be more present would be like, actually just walk and enjoy the scenery, but I find I'm somehow unable to do that. But just reading fiction like every morning has made me feel like I have so much more space, and just in my head, because the business is not my only focus. It's like, there's the business, there's my family, there's my learning Japanese or walking to work, these different things, like giving dimensionality to my day has really, really helped me to slow down. So I would say that the art of slowing down is do lots of hobbies and do them first thing in the morning, because you will never get them done at the end of the day. Like, it's just not gonna happen.
That's so very true, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. And I think one of the main benefits, at least what I'm pushing myself, and I'm very often failing miserably. It's exactly slowing down, and it's so easy to just get the blinkers on, and only see the kind of the immediate problems, or only think about business and not think enough about yourself. But being grounded and relaxed allows you to make better business decisions,
Yeah.
notice things that otherwise you would have missed because you've been running around like a headless chicken, exactly as you said. Well, the other interesting point, actually, sort of that also, I would love to maybe touch upon a little bit on kind of on the business development side, on the marketing side of things. So that kind of approach and a slow process and kind of in the manufacturing and the visibility, obviously that gives you visibility of how your product availability kind of pipeline looks like. How do you marry up that with a kind of the marketing and business and sales side of things, where people tend to, I want to buy it and I want to buy it now. It's like, I don't want to wait for 3 months for it to be available for me. It's like, because I might forget to get it from you and so forth. So how do you manage the two?
Yeah, it's the marketing and sales is arguably like the production is the easy part. It's the marketing and sales is always going to be the hard one. And I think again, it's been like 8 months, so I don't necessarily have enough data to tell you what's working, but what my instinct is to do is to share the things that I am interested in or we are interested in, and to use the tools that are available, which is at the moment is social media. So whether that's like the newsletter, for example, we're trying to view everything through the lens of like, how would we do this like slower, and so slow it would just be like nobody would do this. And so that's the reason we bought a typewriter, so that we can typewrite. Of course, you're not going to send the whole mailing list typewritten because it would take you a month. But we just send one person gets a typewritten letter as part of the newsletter, and you can feel it. You feel the paper where the keys have struck the paper. It's just a very different experience. Like, how often do you receive handwritten notes from people? But I'm not saying that. Like at the moment, I'm handwriting notes for every order. I don't know how feasible this is going to be going forward. But it's nice to take time to do things when you have the time to do it. And in terms of like the daily tasks, I've got a GoPro, so I sort of can record myself making the miso or packing the miso or doing push-ups in the kitchen. And I think it's important. Well, just like you're having conversations with people who aren't necessarily just focused on logistics. You're having conversations with people who, and like you as an individual are a diverse, and you're not just Michael who does logistics and sells software. You have lots of different things that you're interested in, and so I think it's authentic just to share what you like, and the people who are into that will follow you as well. It doesn't have to be that like as cutthroat as like just please buy my miso.
No, absolutely. I think it becomes way too clinical, way too pushy, and it loses authenticity, it loses personal touch, and at the end of the day, it loses kind of, I wouldn't say credibility, but it loses that kind of the human element to this. So it's like, well, somebody has poured their soul into this, and you're getting experience of that a little bit. And that I think that's what makes it different. And I think that's one of the antidotes to the scaremongering people that talk about AI is going to take over everything and we're all going to live in cells and everything is going to be done by robots. No, that's not going to work like this. But let me ask you one last question. If you had a magic wand, and if you had an ability to to get one wish granted from the business and operational point of view, what would it be? What problem, what challenge would you solve if you can just instantaneously address it?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much to share. You say you shouldn't share your deepest dreams, or
No, but
I mean, it would just be if everything was running, and I don't know if this is like things being done by robots or things being packed by humans. Ideally, I listened to a podcast recently, which was through BBC Sounds, and it was a guy who decided to um, do everything on his farm himself rather than outsourcing things. And they ended up employing way more people, and there were ramifications to that, like having to charge higher prices for a more premium product. But it was essentially like doing the opposite of what is the current flow of the culture. And I would much rather have a brewery full of people than a brewery full of full of machines. I just need to get to a point where I'm selling enough that I can afford to do that. But it would be nice to have. Yeah, I don't know. I'm also afraid to be too romantic about how things were. Like I saw on my feed yesterday. Oh, hunter gatherers, they only spend 2 hours a day gathering food, and then the rest of the time they spent socializing. And it's like, yeah, but it's not like you actually want to go back there and do that, because there's all sorts of other dangers, whether it's being eaten by dinosaurs or dying of famine. So if I had a magic wand, it would be to have a space which is not just a business, but is also like a community of people. Like I want to be able to support as many people as possible while producing an amazing product, and it will be just as much about the people as it is about the product. Um, I don't know if sounds too much like a cult, but
no, I think that no, that sounds that sounds to me like a really good idea, and I think we are with that, especially with the modern kind of the social medias, we actually, funnily enough, we're building more distance between people rather than bringing them together, I think. And I kind of 100% sympathize with your point of just, I don't know, yeah, we just need to have a more real human connections. And the
yeah,
workplace is one of those places
yeah, the work and
where you
work
can get it.
work should be nice. It doesn't have to be like hustle culture, wake up at 5 a.m., work till you drop. Like work can be fun if you're doing something meaningful. It can bring you great like joy. And I always, again, thinking of the technology, I keep seeing things telling me, oh, now your AirPods can translate all the languages, and nobody will need to learn languages again. It's like, that's not the point. You're missing the point. When you learn somebody else's language and you speak to them in their language, you're speaking to like directly to their heart. And it's just, you can't replace that with technology. Like
Yeah.
the effort that you have to go to learn that thing, even if it's a small phrase or a song, like it has an impact, it has a feeling, it's an experience that you go through in a conversation with somebody else, and those things can't be replaced. So yeah,
And
I'm not Luddite, I'm not anti-technology, but there is
well,
there's
technology absolutely has its place, but it's 100%. It should not replace people. It should enhance our kind of some aspects of our life, but not at the cost of sacrificing something that actually made us human in the first place.
yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's an interesting tone. We've ended our podcast, but thanks again for joining us. And there was a fascinating discussion. I'm glad that we've touched so many interesting subjects. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Chain Reaction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have a story or insights to share from your sector, we'd love to hear from you. Simply reach out to us through the links in the description. See you next time.